All right, so this is Chase Donner and Joe Zavada doing a quick podcast here on the 2014 Nationals. It's Flight 1, Tasks 1 through 4, and we were sitting around talking yesterday and thought that we had some key takeaways that we wanted to share regarding this flight and some things that might help some of the other fellow competitors or potential competitors out there, and just kind of cover our thought processes and then, like I said, the key takeaways.
The same topic will appear in an article I wrote for Ballooning Magazine in the April-May issue, I think it is. So this kind of goes along with that, with a little more detail. So here's the task sheet. It's the first flight of the 14 Nationals, like Chase said, and we're really concentrating on the fly-on and the strategy around where you choose it and how it affects the rest of the flight, and in this case, really how it shaped the top 5 and top 10 of the overall results. So
let me take you quick through the task sheet here. It's 4-part tasks: head station waltz, fly on, head station waltz, and then a max distance. And that max distance was within a shape. So that was one of the 3D designs in the sky that we had to create a maximum distance within. First thing we do, as always, is we plot the targets on the map so that we can get an idea of the flying area and start to come up with a game plan. And this was done, in this case, individually at the briefing, and then we kind of got to a parking lot near the launch point there and started talking through strategies of where we were going to place the fly on. The fly on in this case was really the only decision as a pilot that we needed to make from a strategy standpoint. General weather conditions where we had a low left. It was in the 10 knot range or 10 kilometers an hour range that we wanted to see. And the plan was to fly low from the launch point to the first hesitation waltz and then kind of come up with our plan from there. But there was an upper level, about 3,500 feet or so, a strong wind from the north to the south.
Which was hard to see because it was so much of a turn and so strong, the pieballs had a hard time getting through it. So this is on the way to the first task, and everybody's kind of in a line. You know, we're doing a little bit of plotting for like the first half of that trek to the first goal. Our original fly-on looked okay, and then we just kept turning right and turning right to the point where we weren't even going to get to the hesitation walls, let alone the fly-on.
Yep, so at this point, we, just going back quick to the fly-on, we decided in that parking lot that our strategy would be best to put the fly-on as close to the minimum distance between task 1 and task 2 as possible. In this case, the minimum distance was 2 kilometers. And the reason for doing so was that we felt like there was more distance between, or the more distance we had between task 2 and task 3, the better off we would do at scoring on task 3. So the idea was to basically place that fly on in an optimal spot, but as close to that 2 kilometer barrier as possible, so that we could set up for task 3. And it turns out that we kind of liked what we did.
It also made sense with the changing winds, you know, from the time we declared to the time we threw. If you could declare that at the minimum distance, that's also the minimum time for the winds to change. So kind of twofold there. You want to do it as quick as possible, at least on this day. On the way to the first target, you can see right at this moment the Hartzell balloons were kind of out in front, and they made the first decision to jump up to altitude to try to find some left. After that, we all went up, and then it became pretty obvious that there was a very hard left turn, like due south at altitude. So at that point, for me, I had to take another look at the fly-on placement.
Yep, we still had the opportunity to change our fly on declaration at this point, being that we could do that if we got a baggie in the scoring area, we could do that on our tail, or we could also have our crew be at the declaration point there, and they could change it in case we didn't get a baggie into the scoring area. So things start getting quick or going quick when you start going up and down pretty quick, and so you're left with very little time to come up with these goals. So it's best that if you can square away or come up with a couple different scenarios before you even get in the air. That way you don't have to do the plotting. You can kind of save some time once you're actually in the air.
Plot multiple goal options, grid them out before you get in the air, or do them on your computer, whatever you do, so you can just choose from some instead of plotting out new ones. And that's what I was doing right there, just in this video. I was writing on the tail of the marker of my final baggie, or my final declaration point.
So going back to the map here, we felt like the thing that made us most successful in this case was that we declared our goal right here, and there were a number of different pilots who chose different goals. Obviously, you can see that some of the pilots put their goal out here, which might have been advantageous for task number 2 because they had more distance here to deal with a climb to about 3,500 feet and then get back down. But they sacrificed a lot of distance to the west here, and when they did that, they made it very difficult to get this angle back down to the hesitation waltz. So it was important to keep your goal as close to the 2K mark as possible, or in line with the hesitation waltz. So if you wanted to go more than 2 kilometers from the hesitation waltz, but that's okay, but you need to make sure that you're going some to the south too, so that way you give yourself a chance down here for the third task.
Looking for the best way to maximize your points on all tasks is really the goal. And here, if you look, this one's a little harder to see, but this has the tracks of our flight on it. So you can see here we had very little time to make the cycle up to 3,500 feet and back down to get our fly-on score. But we had a lot of time to cycle up and get down for the hesitation waltz. So ideally, maybe we should have placed the fly-on a little further south to give us more time before the fly-on, and then still adequate time to get to the hesitation waltz. Those that chose too far to the west just they couldn't cycle back up to get down, as you can see with the tracks. The winds just weren't there. Chase, it's pretty well known that when I'm plotting out a fly-on and doing any kind of strategy work or anything, navigation, I use the map and plotter. What's your method?
Yeah, that's exactly what I use. That's what I was taught to use, and so I do the same thing you did there. I draw a straight line, or I'll draw kind of the wind lines, both kind of the best left and best right going into the first target, and that's exactly what I use to help set up my flight and go from there.
And this stuff can be done in Aussie. Aussie Target is a good tool if you're more electronically oriented, but we find that it's just easier to lay it down with pen and paper on the map. But that's for us. Let's see. This is our approach into the fly-on. We barely got to altitude, tracked in the turn for maybe a couple minutes, and came down. And I think right there over that road was the goal. So no real time it was basically just time the descent and hit the goal. Not a lot of time to do anything. So because of the nature of this nationals, where you chose the fly-on, it impacted your score on the fly-on, it impacted your score on the hesitation waltz, and it could be argued it impacted your score on the max distance, the fourth target of the morning. So there, right there, choosing the way you chose your strategy on the fly on could potentially impact 3 tasks, definitely 2 tasks, maybe 3. And at this nationals, there were only 10 tasks, so that's 20 to 30% of your overall score. So those that maybe kind of didn't do it as well never had enough time to fight their way back into the top 5 or top 10. So a lot of emphasis was put on this particular fly on, but really all of them you need to look at from an entire flight standpoint.
Yep, and just to wrap up here, our key takeaways were that it's really important that you identify the decision that you need to make. The most important decision in this case, it was where do we place the fly on, and then you take into consideration both how well you're setting yourself up to do on task 3 and put it in an ideal place where you can maximize your points on task 2. And so if you can obviously set up to get to task 1, place the fly on in an ideal spot, and then allow yourself a chance on task 3. I mean, you're setting yourself up for a really strong flight.
All right, I think that's it. Until the next fly on.